Well, we're back. Hopefully, we'll get everybody back with us here because we had to start a whole new stream because we lost connection. But we're in business right now. 2000 MCR is not first on version 2 of episode 40 on PBH Live. So let's give everybody a chance. Everybody's popping back in. We're up to 10. So we can get everybody back in here and we'll pick up where we left off. If I can remember where we left off, because I'm so annoyed right now with the computer. I would never give up on you guys. Now it's kind of weird because we usually lose internet service. We didn't lose internet service this time. For some reason, OBS just lost connection and it wouldn't restart. So now at least I know we're going to look for the problem to fix it. So maybe it's something new. Yeah, maybe I said something that the media didn't like and they just shut me down. They knew my position on a few things. Maybe they went after me. They tried to cancel me real quick. So anyway, yeah, tomorrow, according to my wrap designer, which is Chuck at CRD Wraps, we may have our first side rendering that we can work off of and kind of go back and forth on what design changes we want to go with. I have an idea of colors we're going to be going with, which is going to be pretty vibrant, I would say. I'm interested to see what he comes up with because he comes up with some wild stuff, and I'm kind of more conservative and just want the car to look really good. Maybe have some racing livery to it, which I know Alex Flores loves to hear livery and racing backgrounds. I will tell you, we are still planning on doing the viewer sponsorships on the deck lid. So if you're interested or so inclined, once we get the design figured out, we will finalize that program and come up with designs that we can apply to the commemorative hat if you decide to be part of the sponsorship, and how many positions we will have available on the deck lid itself. I have shown you guys this photo here, kind of representing what it's going to somewhat look like, the PBH Live logo with a thank you message, and then your username and photo of your choice, whether you want it to be your face, company logo, or the avatar you use on YouTube itself. We'll put all that stuff on the deck lid along with your name. As you can see, Steve Scheckenberg, he's already on board. Randy Popst, all the great names that nobody knows about and are so highly revered. So it should be cool. It'd be neat to see if we can get a full slate of people on there to help A, get some funds in there to get the wrap completed, and then B, also be part of it. And we're planning on doing at least 3 events. I think Foxtoberfest will also be one of the events that we go to as well. So 4 events, one of them being the first one being the Good Guys Columbus event. Then most likely we're going to be doing King of the Mountain, Pennsylvania, and then Holly Ford Fest at the end of the year at Bowling Green, and then in between there, mix it all up and do Foxtoberfest if they have it, and make sure we can go to it. I'm also planning on attending the F100 Super Nationals in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Once I have all that stuff locked in, even though it's an F100 show, if you're in the area, I'd like to potentially host at some sort of drinking establishment if it's available, or parking lot, just a general meetup. So if guys are in range of Pigeon Forge and I'm going to be there, so we can just all get together, or if you have a project car you want to show us, we want to do features on them. So we'll be at the show. Obviously, it's going to be F100 heavy, so if you got an F100, we'll be there during the day. But if you got a Mustang or something else that has our products on it, we'll just announce where we're going to be, and you can just show up, meet up with us, maybe have a beer, get a bite to eat, something, and just hang out one Friday or Saturday night. Beautiful. So yeah, so we're back in business. Talked about the wrap. We talked about the shows we're going to be going to. You're going to have an opportunity to get on the wrap, be a sponsor of the program itself, and I look forward to seeing that. It's going to be a lot of fun. So tonight's topic is going to be, and Root Beer, how you doing, brother? Thank you for the support. The topic for tonight was power steering routing. So I recently we added a lot of products to our website as related to power steering. We're still adding some stuff too. For example, the low pressure DIY hose kit for the conventional power steering system, non-Hydro Boost, is going to be added there as soon as we get the parts in. We can photograph them and put them on the site. Then we'll put a kit together so you can make your own pressure hose and low pressure return hose basically. Then we're also going to update our Hydro Boost kits so you can get them with or without power steering cooler. So there's been a famous diagram going around the internet for years that was excellent and had a lot of information on it for Hydro Boost, and it just wasn't right to use it for our sales side of things. So we went ahead and made our own. So it took a few days to make some Hydro Boost line diagrams as well. They're going to be reminiscent a little bit to what that person made originally, but just in general, the flow of things. And the way a power steering system works, you got your pump, it's creating pressure, so you're going to have a high pressure hose that's going from your pump directly to your rack. And we say high pressure, we're not talking about a couple 100 pounds. We're talking about upwards of 1300 to 1500 psi. So it's very important to identify which ports are high pressure and low pressure, and make sure you're using the high pressure components in the right position. Because if you put a low pressure push lock hose on a high pressure system, guess what's going to happen? It's going to pop, it's going to make a mess, it could cause fire, there's all sorts of problems. You do not want that to happen. You do not want to use generic push lock or braided hoses for high pressure power steering systems, whether it's Hydro Boost or non-Hydro Boost. It can cause a problem. Push lock is not a place for high pressure power steering. Regular steel braided hoses are not for regular power steering. You need some serious stuff. It's specialty hose, specialty fittings. I'm planning on doing a video on how to actually install those fittings and how to basically mock it up so that when you make your hose ends are aimed in the right direction as you need it for installation. You don't end up with a kinked hose. But they're very particular. They're not even conventional AN braided hose fittings. They are super high pressure. They got this huge barb on them. The hose is braid lined and then Teflon coated and all PTFE, all sorts of crazy stuff, but it can handle upwards of like 2500 psi. And only a few manufacturers make it. Only a few line companies cover it and offer it. So that's what we offer on our website in all of our Hydro Boost kits and non-Hydro Boost kits. So your high pressure hose goes from your pump directly to your rack. Once that's accomplished, then everything else is low pressure in a conventional power steering system. So your low pressure stuff is what you're going to be using to go to your cooler, to your reservoir, then low pressure as well from your reservoir back to your pump. So let's take a look at let's see the first one that comes up here. Okay, so I drew this out with a 99 to 04 Hydro Boost unit. So if you look at the top right of your screen, you've got a 99 to 04 Hydro Boost system, and we will expand this to the 96, 98 stuff once we get those fittings acquired. If you look on the bottom, you see the steering rack sticking up at the bottom of the diagram. The rack that we're using as an example is 79 to 04 because we have the AN fittings for those. 05 and up are going to be different. In this particular one, we have a modular forward power steering pump with our AN fittings on it, as we would deliver all of our AN fittings in our kit. Our Hydro Boost AN fitting kit and hose kit does not include the fittings for the pump. You will have to purchase those separately, whether you're using a GM Type 2 or a modular forward pump. So let's start at the source, our power steering pump. As you can see, the dash 6 fittings coming out of the bottom there, or what would be considered to be the side, comes out, and the first stop it's making is the Hydro Boost. So it comes out, shoots all the way across the screen, goes to that main body fitting that's in the middle of the Hydro Boost booster itself. Once that's accomplished, on a Hydro Boost system, you have a second high pressure hose. Comes out of the square block uniquely found on the 99 to 04 vehicles. We'll give you an AN fitting for that as well, and you'll make up your hose and go directly to the bottom port on the 79 to 04 rack. Now, the way it looks on 79 to 2010 Mustang racks, the orientation for high pressure and low pressure is always the same. High pressure is on the bottom, low pressure is on the top. Yes, all these diagrams are listed on our Hydro Boost products. We're also going to be adding them to our instructions page as well. All variations. We got 4 of them to cover here. Now, coming off the rack, you see the blue line that says low pressure. This is the line that you can do your optional power steering cooler. Coming off of here, if you're not running a power steering cooler, you're just going to go straight to your reservoir. If you are running a cooler, this is where you come off the rack to your cooler, from the cooler back to the reservoir. Now we offer that PSC reservoir, which is really, really nice because it has 3 ports on it. In a factory Mustang Hydro Boost system, they just tee the line. In some cases, I've heard that works fine. Some guys have told me they've had issues doing that. So we offer and found a reservoir that gave us provisions to avoid the tee, just to make sure we didn't have any problems. You'll also see the green line coming off of the Hydro Booster. From the factory, there's a nipple. We offer an AN fitting for that position as well in our kit. And that's also going to be low pressure. And that's basically the return from the Hydro Booster going back to the reservoir. So that's why you have 2 AN-6 ports on the reservoir, because in a Hydro Boost system you have 2 return lines to the reservoir. Where from the factory, those would be teed together, and then you'd have 1 going to the reservoir. Then, of course, from the reservoir, you got to feed the pump, you got to feed the beast. That's your -10, 5/8 hose, basically, that goes to your power steering pump. Now, when you're making these lines, it's important. The feed line, you want to make sure that the feed line is gravity feeding the pump. You want to make sure it's a short run. Make sure there's no disruption as far as it getting from the reservoir to the pump itself. I had a particular issue on mine where my power steering reservoir was in the left front of the engine bay, and it was coming down, and then it had a flat spot, and then it went a little bit up, maybe a little English to it, and then went down to the pump itself, and that was restricting flow because there's no pressure there. So the gravity really wasn't great, and sometimes that pump will get noisy, and then obviously it would aerate, and when it aerated, well, you end up with stuff not having lubrication, and it got really, really noisy. So the way I like to do it with especially if you have a Fox body, we have that Midway Mustang power steering reservoir bracket. That position is ideal because that is literally right above the power steering pump, right behind it, and it's a straight shot down to the pump, no matter which pump you end up going with. So here's the second version of this diagram, but with a GM Type 2 pump. GM Type 2 pumps, the way we offer them, they already come with the AN fitting. So if you buy that pump from us, it's already going to have a -10 feed and a -6 high pressure. So you have your high pressure coming out, of course, going directly to the Hydro Booster. From the Hydro Booster, high pressure down to the rack. Coming out of the rack, low pressure, optional power steering cooler, and then it connects to the reservoir, and then your low pressure coming out the Hydro Booster into the reservoir itself, and then back to feed the pump. Now that we've touched on this, let's see if you guys have any questions that I can answer for you here. Yeah, we're still in good deal. All right, so let's see. Root beer. Thank you very much, man. Thank you. Steve Scheckenberg. We got some nice comments in there from. Let's see. Let's stay on topic here. Yes, Jordan Dunning. Like I said, these diagrams are going to be. They're listed on the products that they pertain to, especially the high pressure hoses, the Hydro Boost systems, and stuff like that. And then I'm going to put them in the instruction section so you can just go through them and pick out which one you're working with. Root Beer asks, will ePass work with the same model years, or do you need some controller for it? No, ePass is it's pretty independent. So as long as you're giving it CAN bus signal, power and ground, it'll work. So as long as the rack fits, it'll work. You won't have any control over it. That's where the controllers come into play. The one that Cortex Racing sells. I think there's another company that makes it as well. So you can adjust how much gain you want out of it, and that'll give you the ability to kind of adjust how much input you want and how quick you want it to react, or if you want comfort settings and stuff like that. But If you take an E-Pass rack out of an 11 and up Mustang and put it into a project car with a Coyote motor, you connect the CAN bus lines to it, power and ground, you're in business. Problem is that rack doesn't have any of the similar mounts as a 79-04 rack, so you will have to make custom mounts or brackets to make it fit. And it's wide. It's big, and it takes room up front too. So if you were to put that in a Fox body, I don't think oil pans are going to be clearing too well with the traditional K members that we have, which is probably why you don't see a whole lot of them in there. So anyway, Brzezicki Brothers. The Brzezicki Brothers. Yes. He says, Brzezicki Brothers Performance. Nice. Just finished my power steering setup using your reservoir bracket and power steering bracket along with the rest of the front accessories running 03 Mustang pump, 034 Cobra Hydro Boost. Made the factory lines work with Cobra pressure line. Goes right into Fox line and works for some reason. No, it should work. You know, the high pressure hose from the pump to the rack, if you don't want to do AN, you can use factory hoses. If you get a 94-95 high pressure hose, it'll go into the 96 and up power steering pump and connect to the Fox rack. It's a little long, but it will work. It will work, and you don't have to make a line. Then you can just deal with low pressure stuff. So that is an option. Kyle Brandon, just drop it in for a moment. I will watch the rest later. Great content. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the contribution, man. I really appreciate it. And I'm sorry for the loss of connection earlier. That's something on our end we'll get figured out, but I'm glad everybody was able to jump over and join us still. Matt 2011 GT, he says, Boss Heads. Yes. Boss Heads. Yeah, all right, so let's talk about a conventional power steering system, non-Hydro Boost. Let's jump back into our routings here. So this is a diagram I drew up today. This one's with a GM Type 2 pump. Kind of the same concept, just a lot less stuff going on because we're eliminating two of the hoses that are found in the Hydro Boost system that we don't use in a conventional power steering system that's non-Hydro Boost. So we still have our high pressure hose. All the same rules apply. Now, Mustang GM Type 2 pumps and Mustang pumps that we're talking about using here, 96 to, let's say, 2010, their pressure range or pressure relief bypass is around 1,300, 1,500 PSI. That pressure is only really produced under load. So if you're turning and you're hitting the locks, that's when you usually see that 1,300, 1,500 PSI. In a Hydro Boost situation, you can see that pressure with full lock and brakes applied and stuff like that. So the GM Type 2 pumps that we're using and we offer are designed to produce 1,250 to 1,300 PSI, about 2.5. Actually, these are 3 gallon per minute. The 3 gallon per minute, the amount of volume that they create is really what's going to influence in a Hydro Boost system the pedal effort, how stiff the pedal is. The more the GPM, also the quicker the steering response. If you are using a GM Type 2 pump with a stock Fox rack, considering that the Fox racks are designed to operate on 2.2 to 2.4 gallon per minute, I would highly suggest using a power steering cooler because that higher flow creates more heat. And you don't want it to get too hot because then you can wipe out component seals and you can aerate your fluid or boil it or whatnot. So if you're using a GM Type 2 pump, I'm going to say you better be using a power steering cooler, whether it's conventional power steering or Hydro Boost. If you're using a Hydro Boost system, I think a power steering cooler is going to be needed because your power steering system is now responsible for you stopping and turning. So make sure your fluid's in good shape, and one way to do that is to run a power steering cooler. It is totally optional. I'm not going to force anybody to do it. You can do it if you want to or not. If you don't think you need it, don't run it. But if you have a problem, keep in mind a power steering cooler might help things stay alive a little bit longer. So anyway, here is our conventional power steering system. We got a high pressure hose that's going to be coming out of the power steering pump into the lower port on the rack. From there, we come out of the low pressure port directly above the high pressure port, and it goes either to our power steering cooler or directly to the reservoir. From the reservoir, we feed the pump. It's a pretty straightforward system. I don't think there's a whole lot to really muddle over here other than routing. Obviously, if you're going to be running a cooler, it's going to be running through in the front of the radiator, and you're going to have a situation where maybe you're passing through some sharp metal areas and so forth. Make sure you're protecting all your lines. Make sure all your O-rings are seated. Make sure all the fittings are tight. Even on my car, I did that PSC reservoir, and it seeps. I got to take it apart, drain it, retighten everything, make sure it's good, because every once in a while I move the car and I got power steering fluid on the floor. That sucks. So that's one of the things I got to do before next Friday. That power steering, there we go. Here is that same system, just with a modular Ford pump. It's the same routing, except here you kind of see it with the Ford pump that we offer with the AN fittings on it. Now we show everything with AN fittings on it because that's how we're going to sell it. You could use stock lines, I would think, if you had a stock Hydro Boost system. And when you're using those stock Hydro Boost systems, yes, you can use the stock lines. You're going to have to bend and twist and maybe even replace some of the soft stuff, because the reservoir is probably not going to end up in the same location. So, yes, you can use it, but at the same time, and this is kind of like a PSA as well, you're building a custom car. You may have to customize stuff. Lines and plumbing are usually wiring, lines, and plumbing are usually the most fabricated and modified areas in any Coyote swap, any engine swap. So keep that in mind. Yes, you can use some factory pieces, but you may have to give them a little bit of English to make them fit exactly how you want them. Make sure they're safe as well. Does anybody have any questions on the power steering system, the way it's routed, what we just showed you there? Is there anything on there that didn't make sense or you need me to clear up? Just post up. Like I said, we're going to have these diagrams. We're going to expand them a little bit more, maybe add some part numbers and stuff like that. But we will have them in our instruction section as a reference, and we will have them on the products that pertain to them in the galleries and the listings as well. So if you need to share it with somebody, just download it and share it, or send them the link from our website, and they all have our watermark on them, so hopefully we'll see how far they go. That other diagram that I'm talking about is amazing. Whoever made that back in the day, I couldn't figure out who it was, but they did a great job of routing it. But they didn't include a cooler in it, so I really couldn't use it, and it wasn't mine to use anyway, so I don't want to take anybody's credit. All right. Kevin and Cooter Baby joining us a little late. No problem. We lost connection, so this is a new stream. It's a whole new day. You'll have to watch 2 streams in the playback. I'll have to see what I can do with that. 2000 MCR says, yes, use a cooler in a Hydro Boost system, as the pump is likely to fail without a cooler. And it's, yes, I agree with you there. If a guy is just cruising around, he probably doesn't need a cooler. You think back to the factory cars that had Hydro Boost, and Ford didn't really put a cooler on them. All they did was kind of like an extra tube. And Fox bodies even have that for their power steering system. It's really a poor man's way of doing a cooler. Now, we offer a pretty substantial cooler. It's pretty big. You don't have to use that. You can use a small little guy. I think they sell them for like $15. As long as you're getting something, I'd be a lot more comfortable with that. I don't want to see somebody without it and potentially have a problem, because then to redo stuff, it's just it's a mess. You got to take stuff apart and add to it. And I would imagine it'd be frustrating if you skipped on that. I get asked all the time for that Hydro Boost system without the cooler. We're going to offer it, but you're saving like $60 or $70 without the cooler. I think that's cheap insurance to make sure that your power steering system stays operational and optimal. We have Coyote engines. Don't tell me you're not going to rev it to 7,500 RPM. If you are, think about what your power steering pump's going to be doing there. Even though it's bypassing, it's spinning the shit out of it, and the fluid's going to get hot. So keep all those things in mind. I'm all for efficiency and keeping things simple. I love the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. But it's not going to kill you to run a power steering cooler. I guarantee you. It's probably not going to be the straw that broke the camel's back budget-wise either. So, anyways. So, yes, that is our power steering scenarios and routing. If you have any questions on that stuff, post up a question in the link of this video, basically in the comment section. You can post it up in the chat room here tonight, and we'll cover it for you. And it will be on our website. You can email us about it. You can call us about it, whatever you need to do. We will have those products available soon. And all of them are 99 to 04 as far as the Hydro Boost goes. As soon as we have the fittings locked down for the 96 to 98 Hydro Boost, we will make new diagrams showing you where those ports are. The 96 98 ones are unique because they have these little hard lines. And of course, those hard lines are different than the 99 to 04s. Because the 96 and 98s are standard and the 99 to 04s are metric. And I have run into some Lincoln Mark 8 stuff, some Ford stuff that's mixed in there somewhere that has a completely different configuration than the Mustang. So I'm going to stick to the Mustang stuff. If you end up with a Hydro Boost that doesn't look like any of them in our diagrams, email us some pictures of it. We will work with you. I was working with a guy today who's in Hawaii that's got a Heights front end, and unfortunately the rack they're using, the fitting comes out and it's like almost dead end into the frame. So I'm working with him to identify what his thread is going into that rack, because I don't know what rack they're using, and then maybe try to get him a banjo or an XRP fitting that's swiveled, that's low profile, so he can get that done. Because Heights wouldn't answer the phone. So he's reaching out to the guy who supplied him the power steering pump and accessory drive for his for his Coyote engine, and now we're just kind of sweeping things up. Let's see here. Project T-Top Capri, how do you guys recommend wiring up the neutral safety switches for ignition and shifter? So if it's a 6R80, all that stuff's handled inside the computer. So anything other than a 6R80 or 10R80, that's when we're going to be talking about neutral safety switch. Because even the 4R70W stuff, it doesn't work within the factory computer. So you're going to have to rig some sort of neutral safety. For the manuals and in the control packs, they give you the factory plungers. All that is designed for those factory pedals. It's hard to apply that to Fox body pedals, low car pedals, Tilton pedals, Willwood pedals. So all you essentially need is a micro switch on the pedal. I would probably reach and do the extra work to put it on the clutch pedal. And all you have to do is basically interrupt that signal. So those two wires that Ford Racing's giving you in the control pack, or what we provide in our body harness as well, all you have to do is have a momentary contact that makes the signal. So it's normally open, and then when it's depressed, it's closed, and that's when you have the signal to tell the computer it's okay to let the starter go ahead and engage. You can bypass it. I don't recommend it, because if someone gets in that car and doesn't realize it's bypassed and it's in gear and you're at a crowd of people, your car can just take off, and that's not good. I saw a kid almost get run over it last time I was at Foxtoberfest, and it wasn't because of that situation, but anyway. So be very careful as far as applying that. Test it in neutral or up in the air or something like that to make sure it works. But Ford Racing is going to give you OEM switches to get it done. If you can't mount those or you don't want to use them, Maximum Motorsports, for example, on their manual brake pedals, they use a GM style sensor, and you can go ahead and apply that to just about any brake pedal. You can reuse your factory switch. You just got to run the wires to the backside, but connect them in, that kind of stuff. So if you don't want to use a clutch pedal or brake pedal, stuff like that, you can have a kill switch that you have to turn on to go ahead and start it, and you can run that to a toggle switch or something like that. You run it to your fog lamp switch. You can run it to a myriad of different things, as long as it's an on-off. It's a stationary on-off, not momentary at that point. Well, actually, no, it could be momentary, I guess, but you can leave it on as well. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for asking, and thank you for watching. Oh, let's see here. Lorenzo Enzo, when you cut corners, you create 2 more corners. Yes. I would agree with that. You may create 3 or 4 and a whole lot of hurt feelings, and maybe even burn the garage down. And what I like to, oh, the one I love. I want to get a shirt made with this. It says, and in Spanish, this is the saying, and I say it all the time: "Lo barato sale caro." And what that translates to is, if it's cheap, it's going to be more expensive. Keep that in mind. Cooter Baby. What a great name. Mazda and Volvo have electric power steering pumps. Used them before. Alleviates the high RPM issues. Yes, but keep in mind, if you're going to have a high performance vehicle, those power steering pumps usually have controllers from the factory. And if you don't have that control, you're stuck at whatever pressure they're producing. Yes, they do have bypasses and so forth, but what I've been told, they don't really hang with autocross and road racing usage. That also is going to come into play when you have big wheels and tires. So keep that all in mind. Let's see here. Caleb, what's going on, brother? Hey, can you post up either a link or some information to your event? It's coming up pretty soon. I think it's in May. He's got a Ford Takeover event happening in Tennessee, I believe. I believe it's in Tennessee. Correct me if I'm wrong, brother. But thank you for joining tonight. If you don't know who Caleb is, he is Foxcast Media. If you look that up on YouTube, he got a great YouTube channel. Covers a lot of stuff. They're actually giving a car away. I think it's called 4 to 8. They did a 4-cylinder, 8-cylinder conversion. Jeremy Dover does a lot of the wrenching on the show. Good customer of ours as well. They use a lot of our product on their project cars. And they're in the middle of the 3-valve to Coyote swap, which I helped Jeremy, I think, fix all the messages he was getting on the dashboard. I think we got that squared away, but I think you're snowed in, so you can't really test it. So we'll see how that works out. And hopefully that car will make it on the channel soon as well. But thank you for joining, man. Thank you for the support. Let's see here. Zachary Anderson, can you just wire the harness to the factory switch in the Fox pedal? Yeah, you can. Because it's, as long as it's, the plunger is working the right way. So again, you want it, if the plunger is, I forget, it should work. I have somebody who did it and it worked. So yes, I believe you can. I don't think there's any reason why you can't. If I'm wrong, let me know. Jackson, Tennessee. So if you're in Jackson, Tennessee, look up Ford Takeover at that drag strip. I think it's at the drag strip you see a lot of times on Motor Trend TV, that Dirty South, where they take the cars and, grudge race them and stuff like that. I think it's at that same drag strip. Really nice little cool place. I don't know if I can make it, but if I can, I'll be there. But I gotta try to save some travel time for some of the other events we're hitting, and Bowling Green's going to be something we want to definitely get to this year, and then also hit Foxtoberfest as well. So we'll see. Let's see here. Florida Slow Guy 78, first time listener. Do you pick random topics each week? We take suggestions on topics. So if you have something you want us to cover, email me and I'll see if I can drum up a show on it. I usually just kind of go with what I see coming across as far as tech questions. Right now I'm trying to apply as many things as possible to the 3-valve Coyote swap guys. This topic here tonight was kind of like foundation level. Next week I should have a 05 to 09 rack here tomorrow. We're going to test fit some fittings on it to see which ones are what, in case guys want to make AN fittings for that. But when it comes to the 3-valve to Coyote swap, if you're using our accessory drive, our speed drive, you can reuse your factory power steering pump, or you can reuse your factory power steering hose, your high pressure. You can reuse your low pressure stuff. You can reuse a lot of things. But guys are probably going to be putting Godzillas in them as well. So, and they may want to run a GM Type 2 pump. So there's going to have to be AN solutions for them as well. So we're going to be covering that for the 3-valve guys, your S190, early S197 guys, pre-Coyote S197 guys are going to be doing swaps. But yeah, topic-wise, we do come up with some topics, and we cover them for the first half of the show. Then we get into generic stuff, project stuff, answer questions in the chat. And sometimes if you ask a question in the chat, you'll probably get answers from the viewers themselves, who, I mean, most of these guys are on par with knowledge-wise as we are. That we're no different than they are. We're enthusiasts. We're learning as we go. And some of these guys already have this stuff figured out, so they may answer questions before I even get to you. So hopefully I answered your question. Thank you for joining us, by the way. Well, let's see here. Max Level says, got my power steering fitting here in Canada. Thanks for PBH and the stickers. You're welcome, brother. Thank you for the order. 2000 MCR. FYI, the Hydro Boost system also runs low pressure return line into the radiator cooler, also along with the external cooler. Okay, yes, they do have some tie-in to the radiators. That is right. I wanted to do that on my car, but I actually did it on my car with a conventional layout. I don't have Hydro Boost. I got manual brakes. But when I built my car with the Coyote, I had a problem with my steering. And that was the one thing that was different than anything I've ever done. So I bypassed it. Problem was still there. I changed the rack. Problem was still there. It was actually the pump right off the shelf. A Motorcraft reman pump was bad on me. So I never did go back because it worked, and I just got a conventional cooler from the auto parts store and called it a day. But it's always been interesting to me because the radiator in my car does have provisions for a transmission cooler. And that's essentially the same style of cooling, same fluid, that's for sure, ATF. And it would probably work and cut down on some of the clutter up there. So that's something to consider too. If you're going to do a power steering cooler and you got a manual transmission car and your radiator has provisions for an automatic transmission cooler, you could use that as a power steering cooler. And you would have a fluid-to-fluid power steering cooler, which is pretty neat. Fermin Sanchez says he's late for this one. He had to feed his chickens. Hey man, I've had $1 for every time I was late for something due to my chickens. Zachary Anderson, we spoke a couple weeks back about a Gen 3 truck motor. Ended up scoring a core from my dealership for $1,000 today, 2019, 25,000 miles. Jiffy Lube had to pay to replace it due to double gasket incident. Oh, cool. So now was there any damage to it? Like, would he have bearings, or was there any failure? That'd be interesting to see if he can salvage that thing without spending any money on it, you know? For me, Nate, man, thank you. What's going on? Our stage 3, sweet hat Frank, sort of have to have the 80s Miami Vice vibe going on. Yes, these hats, we do have a link to them on our website. They're through an affiliate website called Lid Launch. We got 3 different versions of them. I got to order the black. We got Nighthawk, and I think it's the Boulevard Bruiser version. There's like a blue with silver and red lettering. There's a black one with silver and red. Someone bought the black one with the silver and red the other day. I don't know who bought it, but thank you. How we doing? Celine Gaming. What oil pan for Gen 3? What car you running? What K-member? What suspension? Most cases, your Gen 3 Kevlar composite oil pan is probably not going to fit, and then you can't modify it. We are going to be working on a Gen 2 swap oil pan kit for the Gen 3 guys. It comes with a proper pickup tube and oil pan and all the factory hardware and all that stuff, so you can just buy it all at once. You can also go to aftermarket oil pans as well. I don't particularly subscribe to the aftermarket oil pans unless I have to do it for my chassis. In most cases, the aftermarket oil pans can present additional issues with fitment as far as collectors on headers and starters. If you got to go to an aftermarket starter because your oil pan's so big, you really want to ask yourself why you need 10 quarts of oil in an 8-quart system. Unless we're road racing or running the high banks of Daytona, in most cases, the stock oil pan is going to do more than enough that you need for your oiling system. So keep that in mind. But if there is specific oil pan that a chassis manufacturer says you got to use this, you got to use a front sump, you got to use a rear sump, or this or that, then you can go to those as well. Outside of that, the stock Gen 1 or Gen 2 oil pan is pretty tidy. It's all 8 quarts. It's got a crank scraper. The gasket has a built-in windage tray. There isn't a whole lot there there isn't a whole lot wrong with that, I would say. I think most guys are going to be in good shape. If you want to use my car as an example, I have road raced my car. I've run banking. I've autocrossed it. I've beat the hell out of it on the streets, been on the dyno. That's a stock Gen 1 oil pan, and it's done all that stuff. I run a clear view filtration oil filter. I don't have bronze or metal in that thing, and I can watch it, hit it with an air charge, and see the filter before it goes into my oil filter, and it's been on there for like 3 or 4 years now. So it works. So fitment would be the only reason you go to aftermarket. Other than that, stick to the OEM stuff. It's easier on your wallet, and it will give you more fitment options. Zachary says on his Gen 3 engine, no damage found so far. I drove the truck before it was pulled and engine sounded good. Customer ended up in a lawsuit with them, so they just replaced it. Well, that's the right thing to do if I'm Jiffy Lube. I don't want to say, no, you're good to go. We'll just finish your oil change, and then 2 years down the road, the engine blows up. The guy's going after you. He's all over you on social media. So their loss is your gain. That's a good motor pickup. We got some cores here, and some of them are Gen 3, so I'm hoping we find a good one back there, because I would like to do one of those 3-2-1 or 3-1 motors where I get the 12-to-1 compression. I got a Gen 1 Boss core that I can use as well, but if the bottom end's good on the Gen 3, I'm just going to apply all the Boss 302 stuff on top of it, refresh everything, and then replace my Gen 1 motor with a Boss-headed, Boss cam, Boss valve springed Gen 3 short blocked motor with a Gen 1 oil pump and pickup and oil pump gears. Okay, you know what I'm talking about. Let's see here. Hi, Maze Girl. What's your take on the Volvo electric power steering pump? From my takeaway and talking to some people that use them in their own swaps, I think it's a great option for someone who, I would say, let's say the 80% of us, right? That are going to drive our cars in the street, that don't necessarily have any pro touring aspirations or road racing aspirations and stuff like that. It's going to work for you. Your F100 guys, F150 guys, all that stuff. Where it really potentially has an issue is keeping up in those situations. I've actually thought about maybe putting it on my car and then just testing it to see what it does. Does it work? Does it fail? Does it feel like shit, sound like shit? What happens? Because I've been told there's problems. We haven't experienced it for ourselves, so we're going off of the input from others. There's always a gray area there. Now, naturally, we make brackets to use power steering pumps. So if you got a 4.6 car that already has Hydro Boost, you got a 4.6 F-150, 5.4 F-150, any of that stuff, and you're doing a Coyote swap, it just makes a whole lot of sense to buy our brackets and reuse everything you already have instead of trying to reinvent all that stuff. I know they're going to save a whole lot in those situations. In the Fox body world, the F-100 world, especially the vintage stuff, it is a question that you want to address. Most guys just feel comfortable using power steering pumps. That's what they've always had. Electric steering is going to be the wave of the future. I don't think it's going to be electric pumps. I think it's just going to be electric steering. Your e-pass stuff eventually will be working its way into all of these swaps, and it'll be interesting to see what happens, whether it ends up on the steering column or being a rack. It'd be really neat if it was a rack, because then maybe we can have different steering settings. Could we get a 15-to-1 rack? I'd love to have a 15-to-1 rack. No one makes a 15-to-1 rack for hydraulic steering that handles pro touring or road racing. They all say it blows up. I want to test it. I want to see how quick it leaks. I don't know why it would leak that bad, what we're doing to it, but everyone I've talked to on a 15-to-1 rack, whether it's AGR, even PSC, they offer one. They say it's only for street use, for quicker steering and parking lots and stuff like that. It just doesn't. I imagine there's a way to get it to seal. I want to see if we can make it happen, because it'd make my steering a lot quicker, a lot more fun. Sling Game says he's using a Fox. He's asking about the oil pan Gen 3 with a Max Motorsports K member. You want to concentrate. My suggestion would be trying to get a Gen 2 oil pan in that engine, or on that engine, for that K member. You can use something else if you want, but my suggestion would be trying to stick with the OEM pan and putting it in there. Save yourself some money, keep it quality, OEM quality, and predictable, and get the job done. Let's see here. Casimir 28. Would I lose my cruise control when swapping a Coyote to my 05 Mustang? Currently, I'm going to say yes. Until we come out with our chassis-specific harness, I'm going to say it's a no-go on cruise control. You'll have to convert to some sort of aftermarket cruise control to keep it. There are cruise control systems that will tie into your gas pedal. It's a separate module, separate switches, that kind of stuff. But right now, we don't want to advertise that you're going to have cruise control, because we don't know 1,000% that you will. There is a way to keep it, Guys have gotten it to work in Fox bodies, but it usually pertains to using the switches from an 11 to 14 steer wheel, for example, if it's a Gen 1. So, if you can put the 11 to 14 switches in an 05 to 09 steering wheel, or 2010 steering wheel, no, it'll fit that one. There's a good chance you can keep cruise control. Haven't been tested yet. We haven't tried it yet. But there is a path to getting it to work with the right combination of components. Consider that. Let's see here. Frank, can I swap my Gen 2 bottom end for a Gen 3, assuming I keep my Gen 2 heads? Is higher compression the only improvement? Yes. I think power-wise, what they can sustain, I'm not going to rate a Gen 3 that much stronger than a Gen 2. I think they can still, on good days with proper setup, can probably handle upwards of 800 horsepower, if not more. But you're going to add a point of compression, which is going to add power no matter if you're NA or boosted. Let's see here. Let's see here. Celine Gaming, how about a manual rack? Yeah, you can run a manual rack. Just remember, if you get a manual rack, you got to change the steering shaft as well. Ran into that the other day with Alex that didn't realize you had to do that. But manual steering has been around for a long time. It's great when you're moving. It's tough when you're slow and in parking lots. And if you got big, wide wheels, it's going to be even tougher. So keep all that stuff in mind based on your usage. Manual rack might be perfect. Drag racing, car with skinnies, it probably isn't an issue. You put some 17x9s on the front with some 275 tires that are 200 to 300 tread wear, and you have manual steering and you have to back out of a parking spot. If you've changed your steering wheel to something smaller, that maybe it's not factory, you better have some guns to feel comfortable moving that. It'll make a Mustang guy look weak real quick if you don't have it set up right. Same with manual brakes. Oof. Some of those manual brake conversion kits out there, they give you just like a dead pedal, and then you just got to start going to the gym to make sure you can stop the car, get some heat into the pads. So we'll start winding things down here shortly here. Lorenzo Enzo says, I was thinking about putting momentary buttons on the blank area, 05 to 09 Mustang for select shift, running wires through the clock spring. That can be done. Definitely. You can actually, I don't know who makes them, but if you can get the paddles and just attach them to the back of the steering wheel, again, it just has to be momentary. So maybe some of the paddles that they sell for driving simulators that are just momentary buttons, that might be an option as well. Let's see here. Desilu 14 Frank, I'm thinking of swapping a first gen F-150 into my Fox body. Aside from the motor and tranny, approximately how much do you think I would be spending to make this swap happen? That is an open-ended question because there's a lot to cover. With a Fox body, there's a lot of different things you got to address. K-members, headers, is it 5-lug? Are you doing power steering? Are you doing AC? Are you doing hydro boost? Are you doing conventional steering? Are you doing manual brakes? What do you have done to the suspension? Can you reuse what you already have? Do you already have an electric fan on your radiator? Is your radiator stock or is it already upgraded? There's a lot to cover. Fox body guys, if you're buying all your parts and you're doing it yourself, you can do it as cheap as I would consider if you bought a used engine and so forth. If everything's going to be manual and very, very simple, you may only spend, let's say, $6,000 to $10,000 in parts that you have to do. You start throwing in hydro boost and power steering and AC, and all those things start adding up. Gauges adds up. Electric fan, new radiator adds up. K-member adds up. So keep all that stuff in mind. What transmission you're using. If it's a manual, can you reuse the one you have now, or do you have to buy a TKO, a TKX, a 6060, a 56, a 3650? You got to call Hanlon, whoever. That's money. Crossmember drive shaft, 6R80. Hey, if you do a 6R80, awesome. But does it need to be built? How much power are you going to put into it? Drive shaft, crossmember, transmission cooler. It's all money. So there's a lot of variations to that question. It's very open-ended. You can spend, I would say, $7,000 in parts for a car that maybe has already equipment on it that you can use, and you're buying just like a K-member, an engine, you're reusing your transmission, putting an electric fan on a radiator you already have, and you're buying a control pack, and you're just getting it moving. Then you got $35,000 to pay somebody to build you a supercharged Coyote or something like that. So keep that in mind. There's a big range there. That's a very gray question, I would say. And I get asked it all the time. You're not alone in asking that, but it's about 100 to 150 hours in labor to Coyote swap a vehicle. And remember, you're adjusting and changing every system on the vehicle. Fuel system, exhaust, suspension, brakes, AC, steering, cooling system, and electrical and gauges. I mean, the works. So let's see here. Alfredo Diaz has an interesting question. I have an AGR rack in my Fox, tons of autocross, and street driving, no issues. I run AGR fluid in it too with Hydro Boost. That's very interesting because I have heard the opposite mainly. Through people in the industry and people have tried to use it, they had leaks. I don't understand why they leak that bad. The pressure, because it's 15 to 1, how quick things move. I don't know. I want to try it. And if it does leak, I want to see why and if there's a way to fix it. I mean, there's got to be a way to do it. A 15 to 1 autocross setup, that's going to be key. I mean, I think it's got to pay dividends on the course. So, got to try it. Anyway, Desi Lou, you're welcome. That being said, guys, I got to get rolling. I got to get home and rest up. Still 2 days left in the week. Got plenty of things to do. I did unload my 99 to 04 differential before the show went live tonight. And we'll be tearing that one apart this weekend, getting the tubes cut. Then we're going to measure the inside, get the hub, the weld-in piece for the cambered rear end, measured and spun down to size. Then getting that welded on to the tubes. Make sure it's straight. Make sure the tubes are welded. That's where Mike's going to help me out the most. And then we can assemble that thing. We're going to order axles and get our brakes ordered. Willwood is helping me with that as well. And we got a new wrap design that's going to be coming through tomorrow. We'll see how it comes out. And hopefully by next Wednesday, we'll be able to show you a rendering of what the wrap will look like. I'm pretty excited about it. There's some bad juju on my car from a previous sponsor who helped me a lot, so I can't complain too much, but it wasn't the best breakup. And the car got painted, got stickers on it, and you can still see their name on my car. And I don't like that. So the wrap is important to get past that. We're going to get past it. We're going to give it a new look. It's going to look badass. And I'm really excited about it because I think it's going to stand out quite a bit. So stay tuned for that. Join me next week, Wednesday night. Thank you very much for your support. Thank you guys so much for the super chats. If you have any questions about what we cover here tonight, make sure you follow up with me via email, info@pbhperformance.com, frank@pbhperformance.com. You can call us, 561-737-2331. 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, Eastern Time. And if you want to, you can also comment on this video. I'll be back to answer any of those questions. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you share the video. Tell people about the show. We're here. We're here to help. Who knows what is going on out there? Maybe somebody needs some of this information. If you know the answer to it and you want to share the video, share it to them. You can actually share videos by timestamp as well. So if you know where the answer is, you can send it to them directly. And thank you. Thank you very much. We look forward to next week. Shoot me some emails. Tell me some topics you guys want to cover. I'll see if I can get some of that information out there as well. I will have some updates next week as far as power steering lines for your 05 to 10 power steering racks and see what products are out there that we can offer to help you do some AN conversions to that. So thank you again, guys. Thank you so much. And thank you for supporting Power by the Hour Performance. You guys have a good night. Later.